The desert wind carried the scent of gunpowder and dust as Marine Corporal Sarah Martinez adjusted the heavy ammunition crates on her shoulders. At 23, she had earned her place among the most elite fighting forces in the world, but today she felt the familiar sting of being underestimated. The Navy SEALs around her barely acknowledged her presence as she moved between their positions, delivering the precious cargo that kept their weapons firing and their mission alive. "Martinez, double time it with those mags," barked Chief Petty Officer Jake Sullivan, his weathered face creased with concentration as he studied the terrain ahead through his scope. The SEAL team was positioned on a rocky outcrop overlooking a Taliban compound in the mountains of Afghanistan, and tension hung thick in the air like morning fog. Sarah quickened her pace, her combat boots finding purchase on the loose gravel as she navigated between the concealed positions. She had been assigned to this joint operation as an ammunition specialist, a role that typically kept her away from the front lines of combat. Her job was simple in theory, but crucial in practice. Ensure that the elite warriors had everything they needed to complete their mission successfully. The compound below buzzed with activity as enemy fighters moved between buildings, unaware that death watched them from above. Intelligence reports indicated that a high-value target, a Taliban commander responsible for multiple attacks on coalition forces, was hiding within the concrete walls. The mission was straightforward: eliminate the target and gather intelligence from his communications equipment. Petty Officer First Class Marcus Thompson, the team's designated marksman, lay prone behind his rifle, his breathing steady and controlled as he tracked movement through his scope. Thompson was legendary among the SEALs for his precision shooting, with confirmed kills spanning 3 deployments. His M110 semi-automatic sniper system was an extension of his will, and Sarah had heard stories of impossible shots he had made under pressure. "Martinez, set up the extra ammunition here," Thompson instructed without taking his eye from the scope, pointing to a position beside his shooting rest. "Keep it organized by range and target type. When things get hot, I need to be able to grab what I need without thinking." Sarah carefully arranged the various types of ammunition according to his specifications. Standard ball rounds for suppression, armor-piercing for hardened targets, and match-grade precision rounds for long-distance elimination. Each cartridge represented a potential life saved or lost, and she treated them with the reverence they deserved. The rest of the SEAL team consisted of 6 elite operators, each a specialist in their own right. Lieutenant Commander David Rodriguez led the team with the quiet confidence that came from years of successful operations. Petty Officer Second Class Antonio "Tony" Vasquez handled explosives and breaching, his steady hands capable of defusing the most sophisticated improvised devices. Hospital Corpsman Second Class Kevin Park served as the team medic, though his medical training was matched by his proficiency with weapons and tactics. Petty Officer Second Class James "Bulldog" Harrison operated communications and electronic warfare equipment, his technical expertise crucial for maintaining contact with command and disrupting enemy communications. Petty Officer Third Class Michael "Spider" Chun specialized in close-quarters combat and urban warfare, his small stature and incredible speed earning him his nickname. Finally, Petty Officer Third Class Robert "Ghost" Williams served as the team's reconnaissance specialist, capable of moving through enemy territory undetected. As Sarah completed her ammunition distribution, she found herself positioned near the edge of the overwatch position, close enough to Thompson to hand him whatever he might need during the engagement. From this vantage point, she had a clear view of the compound below and could observe the SEALs as they prepared for the assault. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez spoke quietly into his radio, coordinating with command and confirming the rules of engagement. "Eagle Base, this is Neptune 6. We have eyes on the target building. Minimal civilian presence observed. Request clearance to engage." The response crackled through the communications equipment. "Neptune 6, Eagle Base. You are cleared to engage. Priority is capture or elimination of objective gold. Minimize collateral damage." Rodriguez nodded to his team, and they began their final preparations. Each SEAL checked his equipment one last time, ensuring that weapons were properly zeroed, communications equipment was functioning, and medical supplies were readily accessible. The ritual of preparation was as important as the mission itself, a methodical process that had been refined through countless operations. Sarah watched as Thompson made minute adjustments to his scope, accounting for wind direction, temperature, and the distance to various points within the compound. His movements were precise and economical, the result of thousands of hours of training and real-world experience. She had heard that he could consistently hit targets at ranges exceeding 800 meters, even under adverse conditions. Movement in Building 3, reported Williams from his concealed position. Count 4 military-age males, armed with AK-47s. No positive identification on Objective Gold yet. The target building was a 2-story concrete structure with narrow windows and a flat roof. Intelligence indicated that the Taliban commander preferred to operate from the upper floor, where he could observe the surrounding area while remaining protected from direct assault. The building was surrounded by a courtyard with several smaller structures that likely housed additional fighters. "I see them," Thompson confirmed, tracking the movement through his scope. Clean shots available on 2 targets. Waiting for identification of primary objective. Sarah remained motionless beside the sniper, acutely aware that any unnecessary movement could compromise the team's concealment. She had been trained in basic fieldcraft, but operating alongside SEALs required a level of discipline and precision that exceeded normal military standards. Every breath had to be controlled, every shift in position carefully calculated. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on the rocky terrain, and Sarah could feel sweat building beneath her body armor. The weight of her equipment seemed to increase with each passing minute, but she forced herself to remain alert and ready. In combat, the difference between life and death often came down to seconds, and she refused to be the weak link in the chain. "Target identified," whispered Williams over the radio. "Objective Gold is on the 2nd floor, northwest window. He's examining something that looks like communications equipment." Thompson smoothly shifted his aim to the indicated window, his breathing pattern changing as he prepared to engage. "I have eyes on Objective Gold. Clear shot available. Range 820 meters." Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez considered the tactical situation for a moment before responding. "Take the shot when ready, Thompson. Rest of the team will move to secondary positions once the primary target is eliminated." Sarah found herself holding her breath as Thompson made his final preparations. She had witnessed training exercises and knew the theory behind precision shooting, but this was her first time observing a real combat engagement from such close proximity. The gravity of the moment was not lost on her. Within seconds, a human life would end, and the trajectory of the mission would be forever altered. Thompson's finger moved to the trigger, applying steady pressure as he aligned his sight picture. The target remained visible in the window, apparently focused on his communications equipment and unaware of the danger that watched him from nearly a kilometer away. The wind was minimal, conditions were ideal, and the shot was well within Thompson's capability. The rifle discharged with a sharp crack that echoed off the surrounding rocks, the sound of the shot mixing with the mechanical cycling of the bolt as the weapon ejected the spent cartridge and chambered a fresh round. Through her binoculars, Sarah watched as the target in the window suddenly collapsed, the precision round having found its mark exactly as intended. "Target down," Thompson reported calmly, already scanning for additional threats. "Clean hit, no movement from Objective Gold." The compound below immediately erupted into activity as enemy fighters realized they were under attack. Muzzle flashes began appearing from various windows and doorways as Taliban fighters attempted to locate the source of the sniper fire. The sharp crack of AK-47s and the heavier thump of machine guns filled the air as the enemy laid down suppressive fire in all directions. "Multiple contacts engaging from the compound," reported Williams. "Count at least 12 fighters with small arms. No crew-served weapons observed yet." Rodriguez keyed his radio to coordinate with air support. "Eagle Base, Neptune 6. Primary objective eliminated. Request immediate close air support for suppression of enemy combatants. We have troops in contact." The response was immediate. "Neptune 6, Eagle Base. Viper flight is inbound. Time on target 4 minutes. Mark your position and maintain overwatch." Thompson continued to engage targets of opportunity, his rifle speaking with deadly precision as enemy fighters exposed themselves while attempting to return fire. Each shot was carefully aimed and deliberately placed, conserving ammunition while maximizing effectiveness. Sarah watched in fascination as he smoothly worked the bolt action, ejected spent cartridges, and acquired new targets. "I need armor-piercing rounds," Thompson called to Sarah without taking his eye from the scope. "They're starting to use hard cover." Sarah quickly selected the appropriate ammunition and placed it within easy reach of the sniper. The armor-piercing rounds were designed to penetrate concrete and steel, allowing Thompson to engage targets that had taken cover behind walls or vehicle doors. She arranged them in a neat row, ensuring that Thompson could grab them without fumbling or looking away from his scope. The engagement continued for several minutes as the SEALs maintained their overwatch position and systematically eliminated enemy fighters. The Taliban forces below seemed confused and disorganized, firing in random directions as they tried to locate their attackers. Their lack of training and discipline was evident in their poor fire control and ineffective use of cover. "Viper flight inbound," came the radio call from the approaching aircraft. "Neptune 6, mark your target with laser designation." Vasquez activated a laser targeting device and painted the main compound building with an invisible beam that would guide the incoming ordnance to its target. Target marked, Viper flight. Danger close to friendly positions. The sound of jet engines grew louder as the attack aircraft approached the target area. Sarah could see the sleek shapes of F-16 Fighting Falcons as they lined up for their attack runs, their weapon systems locked onto the laser designation provided by the SEAL team. The precision-guided munitions would eliminate any remaining resistance in the compound while preserving the intelligence materials that were the secondary objective of the mission. "Viper flight, guns, guns, guns," came the call as the first aircraft opened fire with its 20mm cannon. Streams of high-explosive rounds stitched across the compound, tearing through concrete walls and silencing enemy weapon positions. The second aircraft followed immediately behind, delivering guided missiles that struck the main building with devastating accuracy. The explosions were tremendous, sending clouds of dust and debris high into the air as the structure collapsed under the assault. Secondary explosions indicated that the enemy had been storing ammunition and explosives within the building, adding to the destruction. When the smoke finally cleared, the compound was a scene of utter devastation. "All Viper flights, mission complete. No further enemy movement observed," reported the lead pilot as the aircraft departed the area. Rodriguez surveyed the destruction through his binoculars before making the decision to advance. "All Neptune elements, prepare to move to Phase 2. We need to search for intelligence materials and confirm elimination of the primary target." The team began preparing for their descent into the compound, checking equipment and coordinating their approach route. Sarah gathered the remaining ammunition and prepared to follow the team as they moved to the secondary phase of their mission. Her role would shift from ammunition resupply to security and support as the SEALs conducted their detailed search of the target area. Thompson disassembled his sniper system and packed it for movement, his efficiency impressive as he transformed from precision marksman to mobile assault trooper in a matter of minutes. The M110 broke down into manageable components that could be quickly reassembled if needed, though the close-quarters nature of the compound search would likely require different weapons. "Martinez, you'll provide rear security during the compound search," Rodriguez instructed as the team prepared to move. "Stay alert for any enemy reinforcements or civilians who might pose a threat." Sarah nodded her understanding, checking her M4 carbine and ensuring that her magazines were properly seated. Her marksmanship training had been extensive, though she had never fired in actual combat. The thought both excited and terrified her, knowing that her next few hours could define her military career. As the team prepared to begin their descent toward the compound, Sarah took one last look at the overwatch position where she had spent the morning. The rocky outcrop had provided perfect concealment and fields of fire, allowing the SEALs to dominate the engagement from the opening shot. Soon they would be moving into the dangerous environment of the compound itself, where the advantages of range and concealment would be replaced by the immediate threats of close-quarters combat. The wind continued to blow across the mountainous terrain, carrying with it the acrid smell of explosives and burning debris from the destroyed compound. Sarah adjusted her gear one final time and prepared to follow the SEALs into whatever dangers awaited them in the ruins below. She had performed her role as ammunition specialist flawlessly, but something told her that the most challenging part of the mission was yet to come. The descent into the compound took nearly an hour as the SEAL team carefully navigated the treacherous mountain terrain. Sarah followed closely behind Williams, the reconnaissance specialist, as he led them along a concealed route that would bring them to the compound's eastern wall. Every step required careful placement to avoid loose rocks that might create noise or cause a dangerous fall down the steep mountainside. Rodriguez had divided the team into two elements for the approach. The first element, consisting of himself, Vasquez, and Park, would enter through the main gate and secure the primary building where the target had been eliminated. The second element, Thompson, Harrison, Chun, and Williams, would breach the eastern wall and clear the secondary structures where intelligence materials might be hidden. Sarah had been assigned to support the second element, carrying additional breaching charges and medical supplies that might be needed during the compound search. Her M4 carbine was loaded and ready, safety off, finger indexed along the trigger guard as she had been taught. The weight of responsibility pressed down on her like the heavy ammunition crates she had carried that morning, but she was determined not to let the team down. 2 minutes to breach point, Williams whispered into his radio as the team approached their objective. The compound wall loomed ahead, its concrete surface scarred by shrapnel from the airstrike, but still largely intact. Vasquez had identified a weak point where the explosives would create an entry hole without causing structural collapse that might endanger the team. Thompson checked his M4 carbine and attached his backup optic, a red dot sight that would allow him to engage targets quickly at close range. The transition from precision sniper to assault trooper was complete, though Sarah noticed that he still carried his favorite sidearm, a customized M1911 pistol that had accompanied him through multiple deployments. "Martinez, once we're inside, you maintain security on our entry point," Thompson instructed quietly. "If we need to extract quickly, that door needs to stay open and clear. Any enemy reinforcements try to cut off our escape route. You engage immediately." Sarah nodded her understanding, feeling a mixture of pride and anxiety at being trusted with such a critical responsibility. The entry point would be their lifeline, and any failure to maintain security could trap the entire element inside the compound with no way to retreat to safety. Vasquez approached the wall with his breaching charges, carefully placing the shaped explosives at strategic points that would create a clean breach without excessive collateral damage. His movements were methodical and precise, the result of countless hours of training with explosives and breaching techniques. Each charge was positioned to direct its energy inward, minimizing the blast effect on the surrounding area. "Charges set, 30 seconds to detonation," Vasquez reported as he returned to the team's position behind a protective rock outcrop. "Fire in the hole in 3, 2, 1. The explosion was sharp and violent, sending chunks of concrete flying through the air as the charges tore a ragged hole in the compound wall. Dust and smoke obscured the breach point for several seconds, creating natural concealment for the team's entry. Rodriguez's voice crackled over the radio, confirming that the first element was beginning their breach of the main gate. "Neptune 2, go, go, go," Thompson commanded as the second element moved toward the breach. Williams led the way, his weapon raised and ready as he stepped through the hole in the wall and into the compound courtyard. Chin followed immediately behind, covering the left side, while Harrison covered right. Thompson entered fourth, with Sarah bringing up the rear. The compound interior was a scene of devastation from the airstrike. Rubble and debris were scattered everywhere, and several of the smaller buildings had sustained significant damage. The acrid smell of explosives hung heavy in the air, mixed with the dust that continued to settle from the collapsed structures. Sarah could hear the distant sound of gunfire from the main building, where Rodriguez's element was engaging remaining enemy fighters. "Building clear, moving to Building 2, came Rodriguez's voice over the radio. "Light resistance encountered, 2 enemy Kia. No friendly casualties." Williams led the second element toward a partially collapsed structure that appeared to have been used as a communications center. Twisted metal antennas protruded from the rubble, and Sarah could see the remnants of electronic equipment scattered among the debris. This was likely where they would find the intelligence materials that were their secondary objective. Thompson positioned himself to provide overwatch while Chun and Harrison began the dangerous task of clearing the damaged building. Sarah took up her assigned position at the breach point, her M4 ready as she scanned the surrounding area for any signs of enemy movement or reinforcement attempts. The weight of the weapon felt familiar and comfortable in her hands, though she hoped she wouldn't need to use it. Movement, southeast corner. Sarah reported quietly into her radio as she spotted figures moving among the ruins of a distant building. Through her scope, she could see at least 3 individuals, though she couldn't determine if they were enemy fighters or civilians who had taken shelter during the attack. Thompson immediately shifted his position to get a better view of the contacts Sarah had identified. "I see them. Appears to be civilians, no weapons visible. Continue to monitor, but do not engage unless they present a clear threat." The figures moved slowly through the rubble, apparently searching for something or someone among the debris. Sarah watched them carefully, her finger remaining indexed along the trigger guard as she waited for any indication of hostile intent. The rules of engagement were clear. Positive identification of enemy combatants was required before using deadly force. Neptune 2, we've located the communications equipment, Harrison reported from inside the damaged building. Most of it's destroyed, but there might be salvageable hard drives and memory devices. Need about 10 minutes to properly search and collect everything. Sarah maintained her vigilant watch on the breach point and the surrounding area as the team worked inside the building. The civilians she had spotted continued to move through the distant ruins, but they made no attempt to approach the compound or interfere with the operation. Her radio crackled occasionally with updates from both elements as they continued their methodical search of the target area. A sudden movement caught her attention from a different direction, and Sarah swung her weapon toward a partially collapsed wall where she had seen something that didn't belong. Through her scope, she could make out the distinctive shape of an AK-47 barrel protruding from behind a pile of concrete blocks. Someone was taking a concealed position with a clear line of sight to the breach point. "Contact right, 200 meters, Sarah whispered urgently into her radio. Single enemy fighter with small arms, concealed position behind the collapsed wall. Thompson immediately moved to support her, positioning himself where he could engage the threat if necessary. "I don't have a clear shot from here. Can you engage?" Sarah studied the target through her scope, noting that only the weapon barrel and a small portion of the fighter's shoulder were visible. It was a challenging shot, especially for someone who had never fired in combat. But the enemy fighter was clearly preparing to ambush the team when they attempted to leave the compound. "I can take the shot," Sarah reported, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. "Target is partially concealed, but within range. Take him," Thompson commanded without hesitation, "before he gets a chance to engage." Sarah controlled her breathing and aligned her sight picture, placing the red dot of her optic on the visible portion of the enemy fighter's shoulder. At 200 meters, the shot was well within the effective range of her M4, though the target's concealment made precise placement critical. She applied steady pressure to the trigger, feeling the weapon's familiar recoil as it discharged. The enemy fighter immediately dropped behind cover, and Sarah couldn't determine if her shot had been effective. She maintained her aim on the position, ready to engage again if the threat reappeared. Seconds passed without any movement from behind the collapsed wall, and Thompson used his radio to coordinate with the rest of the team. Possible enemy neutralized at the breach point. Continue mission, but be advised we may have additional contacts in the area. The tension of her first combat engagement gradually began to fade as Sarah maintained her watch on the suspected enemy position. She had fired her weapon instinctively, without the paralyzing fear she had expected to feel. The months of training had taken over, guiding her actions through the critical moments when hesitation could have cost lives. "Good shooting, Martinez," Thompson said quietly, his voice carrying approval and respect. "That's exactly the kind of quick thinking that keeps people alive out here." Sarah felt a surge of pride at the recognition from the experienced SEAL, but she forced herself to remain focused on her assigned sector. The mission was far from over, and maintaining vigilance was crucial to ensuring everyone made it home safely. She continued to scan the area methodically, looking for any additional threats that might be positioning themselves for an attack. Neptune 1, we've completed our search of the main building, Rodriguez reported over the radio. Primary target confirmed, eliminated. Intelligence materials collected. Preparing to link up with Neptune 2 for extraction. Harrison emerged from the damaged communications building carrying a waterproof case filled with recovered electronic devices and documents. Chun followed behind him, providing security as they moved toward the breach point where Sarah maintained her overwatch position. The collection phase of the mission was complete, and now they needed to safely extract from the compound. Neptune 2, mission complete. Preparing for extraction to primary landing zone. Thompson reported as the element consolidated at the breach point. No additional enemy contact since the engagement at our position. The team began their methodical withdrawal from the compound, with Williams once again leading the way as they climbed back up the mountainous terrain toward their extraction point. The helicopter landing zone was located on a plateau approximately 2 kilometers from the compound, requiring another challenging climb through difficult terrain. As they moved away from the compound, Sarah couldn't help but reflect on the events of the day. She had begun the morning as simply an ammunition specialist, a support role that kept her away from direct combat. But circumstances had thrust her into a position where her actions directly impacted the team's safety and mission success. The shot she had taken to eliminate the concealed enemy fighter had been her first in combat, and she had performed exactly as her training had prepared her to do. Thompson seemed to sense her thoughts as they climbed the rocky slope. "How are you feeling about what happened back there?" he asked during a brief rest halt. "Honestly, I feel like I did what I was trained to do," Sarah replied, surprised by her own calm demeanor. "When I saw that threat to the team, everything else just disappeared. Training took over." "That's exactly the right attitude," Thompson responded approvingly. "Too many people freeze up the first time, or they get overwhelmed by the situation. You stayed focused and made the right decision under pressure." The climb to the extraction point took nearly 2 hours as the team maintained tactical spacing and periodically halted to observe their back trail for any signs of pursuit. The Taliban forces in the area might attempt to track them to the landing zone, though the destruction of the compound had likely eliminated most of their organized resistance capability. Rodriguez coordinated with the extraction aircraft as they approached the landing zone, confirming that the area was secure and ready for pickup. Eagle Base, Neptune 6. Landing zone is cold, no enemy activity observed. Ready for extraction. Neptune 6, Eagle Base. Razor flight is inbound. Time on target 8 minutes. Pop smoke to mark landing zone. Vasquez deployed colored smoke grenades to mark the designated landing area, the bright orange smoke providing a clear reference point for the incoming helicopters. The sound of rotor blades grew steadily louder as the extraction aircraft approached from the east, their crews ready to quickly load the SEAL team and depart the area. 2 MH-60M Black Hawk helicopters appeared over the mountain ridge, flying in formation as they approached the landing zone. The lead aircraft would pick up the SEAL team, while the second provided security overwatch and fire support if needed. Both helicopters were equipped with defensive weapons and electronic countermeasures to protect against enemy surface-to-air missiles. The lead helicopter flared into the landing zone, its rotor wash creating a cloud of dust and debris as it touched down on the rocky plateau. The crew chief waved the team forward, and they quickly moved toward the aircraft in their predetermined order. Sarah found herself running across the uneven ground with her equipment, grateful that the long day of operations was finally coming to an end. As the helicopter lifted off from the mountain plateau and turned toward their base, Sarah looked back at the compound they had just left. Smoke still rose from the destroyed buildings, marking the site where they had successfully eliminated a high-value target and gathered crucial intelligence materials. The mission had been accomplished exactly as planned, though her own role had evolved far beyond what anyone had expected. Thompson settled into the seat beside her as the helicopter gained altitude and headed towards safety. You know, Martinez, you might want to consider cross-training as a designated marksman when we get back to base. You've got the right instincts for it. And we can always use people who can think under pressure. Sarah considered his suggestion as she watched the rugged Afghan landscape pass by below. The idea of expanding her role beyond ammunition specialist appealed to her, especially after the confidence she had gained during the day's operations. Perhaps there were opportunities ahead that she hadn't previously considered. The flight back to base would take approximately 40 minutes, giving the team time to conduct their preliminary debriefing and prepare their after-action reports. Sarah knew that her actions during the mission would be carefully reviewed and analyzed, both for lessons learned and for potential recognition of exceptional performance. The forward operating base materialized through the evening haze as their helicopter approached the landing pad, its perimeter lights creating a beacon of safety in the hostile Afghan landscape. Sarah felt the familiar mix of relief and adrenaline that came with completing a successful mission, but she could sense that something significant had changed within her during the day's operations. She was no longer just the ammunition specialist who had left base that morning. As the Black Hawk touched down, the team quickly disembarked and moved toward the debriefing area. The base intelligence officer, Major Patricia Stevens, was waiting for them with her laptop and recording equipment, ready to capture every detail of the mission while the memories were still fresh. These initial debriefings were crucial for both operational analysis and intelligence exploitation of the materials they had recovered. "Gentlemen, Corporal Martinez, excellent work out there," Major Stevens began as the team settled around the conference table in the secure briefing room. Initial reports indicate complete mission success with no friendly casualties. Let's go through this step by step, starting with the approach and target identification. Rodriguez led the debriefing, methodically recounting the team's actions from insertion through extraction. Each team member contributed details about their specific responsibilities and observations, building a comprehensive picture of how the mission had unfolded. Sarah listened as her colleagues described events she had witnessed from her unique perspective as the ammunition specialist. When the discussion reached the point where Sarah had engaged the concealed enemy fighter, Thompson interrupted the chronological narrative. "Major, I need to specifically highlight Corporal Martinez's actions during the compound phase. She identified and eliminated a threat that could have seriously compromised our extraction." Major Stevens turned her attention to Sarah, her expression showing genuine interest rather than the polite acknowledgement that typically accompanied discussions of support personnel. "Corporal Martinez, please describe what you observed and how you handled the situation." Sarah took a deep breath and recounted her actions during those critical moments at the breach point. She described spotting the concealed enemy fighter, making the tactical assessment, and taking the shot that neutralized the threat. As she spoke, she noticed that the SEALs around the table were listening with the same attention they gave to operational briefings from their own team members. "Distance to target?" Major Stevens asked, making notes on her laptop. "Approximately 200 meters, ma'am. Target was partially concealed behind debris from the airstrike, with only the weapon barrel and part of the shoulder visible." "First shot hit," Thompson interjected. "Clean engagement, textbook execution under pressure." Major Stevens nodded approvingly as she continued taking notes. "Corporal Martinez, your personnel file indicates that you're trained as an ammunition specialist with standard infantry qualifications. No advanced marksmanship training listed." "That's correct, ma'am. Just basic rifle training and annual qualification requirements." "Well, your performance today suggests you have natural aptitude that goes well beyond basic qualifications," Major Stevens replied. "I'll be including a recommendation in my report that you be considered for advanced training opportunities." The debriefing continued for another hour as they discussed intelligence findings, equipment performance, and lessons learned from the operation. The electronic devices and documents recovered from the compound had already been forwarded to higher headquarters for analysis, and initial indications suggested they contained valuable information about enemy operations in the region. As the formal debriefing concluded, Rodriguez pulled Sarah aside for a private conversation. "Martinez, I want you to know that your performance today was exceptional. You adapted to changing circumstances and made decisions that directly contributed to mission success. That's not something we see from everyone, especially on their first real combat operation. Thank you, sir. I just did what seemed right at the time. That's exactly my point, Rodriguez continued. Good tactical instincts can't be taught in a classroom. Either you have them or you don't. You clearly have them. Thompson joined their conversation, carrying 2 cups of coffee from the mess area adjacent to the briefing room. Martinez, I meant what I said earlier about cross-training. I've been authorized to recommend personnel for the designated marksman course that starts next month at Quantico. It's intensive training, but you've already proven you can handle the pressure. Sarah accepted the coffee gratefully, using the warm cup to steady her hands as she considered the unexpected opportunity. The designated marksman course was highly competitive, typically reserved for infantry Marines who had demonstrated exceptional shooting ability over multiple deployments. For an ammunition specialist to be recommended was almost unprecedented. What would that mean for my current assignment? She asked, thinking about her responsibilities with the logistics unit. If you're selected and successfully complete the course, you'd be transferred to a line unit where your skills would be put to better use, Rodriguez explained. We're always looking for qualified people who can operate at the level we require. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Colonel Michael Patterson, the base commander, who rarely appeared for routine mission debriefings. His presence indicated that the day's operation had attracted attention at higher levels of command, probably due to the high-value nature of the target they had eliminated. Ladies and gentlemen, outstanding work today, Colonel Patterson began, his voice carrying the authority that came from years of special operations experience. The target you eliminated was responsible for coordinating attacks that killed 17 coalition personnel over the past 6 months. The intelligence materials you recovered are already providing leads on additional high-value targets. The colonel's gaze settled on Sarah as he continued. Corporal Martinez, I've been briefed on your actions during the mission. Your quick thinking and accurate shooting prevented what could have been a significant tactical problem for the team. That kind of performance doesn't go unnoticed. Sarah stood at attention, unsure of how to respond to such direct recognition from a senior officer. Thank you, sir. I was just doing my job. No, Corporal, you were doing much more than your job, Colonel Patterson replied firmly. Your job was to provide ammunition support. You chose to take on additional responsibilities when the situation required it, and you executed those responsibilities flawlessly. The colonel turned to address the entire team. I'm putting all of you in for commendation awards for today's mission. The precision with which you executed this operation, combined with the intelligence value of the materials recovered, makes this one of the most successful operations conducted from this base. After the colonel departed, the team began to disperse to handle their individual post-mission responsibilities. Equipment needed to be cleaned and maintained, reports needed to be written, and personal gear needed to be resupplied for future operations. Sarah found herself walking back to her quarters alongside Chun, who had been quietly observing her throughout the debriefing. You know, Martinez, when I first saw you this morning, I figured you were just another logistics person who'd stay out of the way and do your job, Chin said as they walked across the base compound. I was wrong about that. What do you mean? I mean that most people, when they're put in a high-stress situation for the first time, they freeze up or make bad decisions. You stayed calm and made the right choice when it counted. That's not common, even among experienced operators. Sarah considered his words as they reached the barracks area where her quarters were located. The day had begun with her simply hoping to do her job competently and stay out of the way of the elite warriors she was supporting. Now she was being offered opportunities that could fundamentally change the direction of her military career. Her quarters were small and Spartan, containing only the basic necessities for military life in a combat zone. She sat on her narrow bunk and began the process of cleaning her M4 carbine, a ritual that helped her process the events of the day. The weapon had performed flawlessly when she needed it most, and she wanted to ensure it would be ready for whatever challenges might come next. As she disassembled the rifle and began cleaning each component, Sarah reflected on the moment when she had taken her first shot in combat. The target had been clearly identified as a threat to her teammates, and her decision to engage had been instinctive and immediate. There had been no hesitation, no second-guessing, just the application of her training to the situation at hand. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts, and she looked up to see Thompson standing in the doorway. He had changed out of his combat gear and was wearing the standard utility uniform that was typical for base operations. "Mind if I come in? I wanted to talk to you about something." Sarah gestured for him to enter and continued working on her rifle as he settled into the single chair that served as the room's only furniture besides the bunk and a small desk. "I've been thinking about what happened today," Thompson began, "and I want to make sure you understand what you're being offered with this designated marksman training." "I'm listening." "The course itself is just the beginning. If you successfully complete it, you'll be qualified to operate with special operations units on a regular basis. That means deployments like today will become routine, not exceptional. Are you prepared for that kind of responsibility?" Sarah paused in her cleaning to consider his question. The morning's mission had been intense and challenging, but she had felt more engaged and purposeful than she had during months of routine logistics duties. The idea of regularly participating in operations where her skills could make a real difference was appealing rather than intimidating. "I think I am," she replied honestly. "Today felt like what I joined the Marines to do. Everything else has been just preparation for moments like that." Thompson nodded approvingly. "That's the right answer. A lot of people think they want to be in special operations until they realize what it actually entails. The training is brutal, the deployments are dangerous, and the margin for error is essentially zero. But you get to work with the best people and accomplish missions that actually matter," Sarah added. "Exactly. The reward is worth the risk, but only if you're completely committed to excellence." Thompson stood to leave, then turned back with one final thought. "I'm going to recommend you for the course, Martinez. Don't let me down." After he left, Sarah finished cleaning her rifle and began preparing for the next day's duties. Her regular responsibilities as an ammunition specialist would continue until any potential reassignment was finalized, and she wanted to ensure that her current performance remained at the highest level. The base settled into its normal evening routine as the sun disappeared behind the mountains, but Sarah found sleep difficult as her mind continued processing the day's events. She had proven herself capable under pressure, earned the respect of elite operators, and been offered opportunities that could transform her military career. Her thoughts turned to the concealed enemy fighters she had engaged during the mission. Intelligence reports would eventually determine whether her shot had been fatal or merely wounding, but either way, she had successfully neutralized a threat to her teammates. The weight of that responsibility was sobering, but she felt no regret about her actions. The next morning brought new challenges as Sarah returned to her regular duties while simultaneously preparing for the possibility of attending the designated marksman course. Her immediate supervisor, Staff Sergeant Williams, had been briefed on the previous day's mission and was supportive of her potential reassignment. "Martinez, I hate to lose a good Marine, but this kind of opportunity doesn't come along often," Williams told her as they reviewed the day's ammunition resupply requirements. "If you get selected for that course, you need to grab it with both hands." The official notification came 3 days later in the form of orders to report to Marine Corps Base Quantico for the Advanced Designated Marksman course beginning the following month. Sarah read the orders twice to ensure she understood them correctly, then immediately began preparing for the transition. Rodriguez found her that evening in the base library, studying field manuals related to advanced marksmanship techniques. "Congratulations, Martinez. Those orders represent a significant vote of confidence in your abilities." "Thank you, sir. I want to make sure I'm as prepared as possible when I report to Quantico." "The best preparation you can do is to maintain the same attitude you showed during our mission. Stay focused, trust your training, and remember that your teammates are depending on you to perform when it matters." As Sarah prepared to leave Afghanistan for advanced training, she reflected on how dramatically her military career had changed in just a few days. She had begun as an ammunition specialist supporting elite operations from the background, but circumstances had thrust her into a role where her individual actions directly impacted mission success. The designated marksman course would be challenging, demanding precision and consistency under extreme pressure. But Sarah felt confident that she possessed the fundamental skills and mental attitude necessary to succeed. Her first combat engagement had proven to herself and others that she could perform when lives were on the line. The flight that would take her away from the combat zone and toward her new training assignment was scheduled for the following week. As she packed her gear and prepared for departure, Sarah knew that she was embarking on a path that would define the remainder of her military career. Thompson stopped by her quarters on her final evening at the base, carrying a small wrapped package. "I wanted to give you something to take with you to Quantico," he said, handing her the gift. Inside the package was a custom-made rifle scope cover embroidered with the SEAL Trident insignia and her name. "This is from the whole team. You earned your place among us during that mission, and we wanted you to have something to remember it by." Sarah felt a surge of emotion as she examined the thoughtful gift. "Thank you. This means more to me than you know. Just remember where you came from and what you're capable of achieving. The Marines are getting one hell of a designated marksman, and whatever unit you end up with is going to be lucky to have you." As Sarah prepared for sleep on her final night in Afghanistan, she looked at the scope cover that now held a place of honor among her personal belongings. Tomorrow would begin a new chapter in her military career, one filled with challenges and opportunities she could never have imagined when she had started the day as simply the ammunition runner who kept the elite warriors supplied and ready for action. As the helicopter continued its flight toward safety, Sarah felt a deep sense of satisfaction at having contributed meaningfully to the mission's success. She had proven to herself and to the SEALs that she could perform under pressure when it mattered most. Whatever challenges lay ahead in her military career, she now had the confidence that comes from succeeding in actual combat operations.